when someone is walking down the street and realizes they're walking in the wrong direction, rather than just turning around, they will pretend they just got a message and then turn around. Has anyone here done that? I guess everybody has insecurities. I started school at a very young age. I was, for the duration of school, 3 years younger than all of my classmates. I got advanced a couple of years, and for the duration of school, I was the youngest. To put it a little bit in perspective, at some point, I was 9, and my classmates were 12, and while their voices and their bodies were changing, I was still a kid for another couple of years. As a result, we never really had that much in common, and it was very hard, made it really hard to socialize. I also decided to keep to myself and just work on getting good grades. Another thing that didn't help was that I would not miss a chance to let them know how much smarter I was than they were, which is not a very smart thing to do, as I found later, and it doesn't really help you make friends. But the result of this was that I didn't really make an effort to socialize and didn't really develop important social skills that most people develops and learns while they're teenagers. As a young adult, I started struggling with feelings of anxiety and social phobias. My feelings went from just me being a little bit uncomfortable in certain situations to me freezing or crying in the face of a stressful moment. Just a few years ago, I found that my feelings had a name. I was suffering from social anxiety disorder. And it got so bad that it was getting in the way of just normal everyday tasks. I never really spoke openly about this with anybody because I was afraid people would think I was weak. And just like you mentioned before, just trying to keep that facade of being a superwoman. I also just thought it was a normal thing because I was shy, so that was the cards I was dealt. Apparently, social anxiety disorder is really common. About 1 in 20 people may experience one or several types of phobias. Some of these go undiagnosed and is most commonly found in women. Plenty of us may feel awkward in social situations, and some of these feelings may be connected to deep traumatic experiences from our past, and they need professional help. But many of them are in our imaginations. Many of them are completely irrational, just like in the example of walking in the wrong direction. Nobody's looking, nobody cares. But we care so much about what other people may think of us that we go through great lengths to not look stupid. I was incredibly jealous of confident people. I looked at them and I thought, well, it's like they can do anything. There's no limit to what they can do. Whereas I was holding myself hostage. And it got me thinking, surely confident people was not born that way. And if they were not born like that, whatever they had could be learned. I was going to train myself to be brave. If developing emotional strength was anything like developing physical strength, all I needed to do was a training plan. I needed to put myself under stressful situations enough times until they were not stressful anymore, and I was going to do this on purpose. When I turned 20, I moved to Sydney to start my design degree. While there, I got a job at a restaurant. Now, being socially inept didn't really lend itself well to this line of work. I was not very engaging, I was not very friendly, it was virtually impossible to get any small talk out of me. And this was translating in less tips. I also got passed for promotion. I was very efficient, but this job required just a little bit more than efficiency. So I decided that I was not going to let my past predict my future and trace a plan for myself in order to master the art of small talk. The plan was I was going to do something that my mom told me not to do, which was talk to strangers. I was going to engage random people in conversation, so random people in random conversations. Any chance I got, I would comment about anything. And the way I would measure how I was progressing was by how long every time I could keep each conversation going. I'd comment on anything, your nice shoes, the awful weather, any excuse would be feasible. And at first, it was really hard, and lots of people would walk away. Maybe they had things to do, or maybe I was just creepy. But with time, it started getting a little bit better. I also learned how to pick my moments better, and started favoring places and situations where people had to be engaged for a little while, where people had to stay put. So if you were sitting in a plane next to me, you were mine. Over time, it started getting a lot better. And one day I realized that it almost felt natural. I didn't feel like I was forcing it. Looking back to it, it was a great time investment. Today, having dealt with the fear of social situations has really helped my network grow and has really helped me grow at a personal level. I'm still very much in the habit of talking to strangers just for no reason, so you can try me after the talk. Another one of the fears I decided to deal with was the fear of confrontation. And I know what you may be thinking. You're Latina, confrontation comes natural to you, but really, whenever I got into a heated argument with anybody, I would have a poor physical reaction. My eyes would swell, my throat would swell, my eyes would tear out, I would get really, really flustered. And I could not ever get my point across and be rendered powerless. While living in Sydney as well and studying design, I got a job at a coffee shop owned by a Greek family. In this coffee shop, there was the two sons, there was the mom, and the dad, whose only real ability seemed to be to make waitresses cry. And this was an exercise that he was in the habit of doing regularly. At first, I kind of ignored it because I really needed the job. But at some point, it wasn't long until he caught my patience, and I said, this place is not paying me enough to let anybody talk to me like that. But instead of just leaving, which would have been the easy way, and finding another job, I decided I was going to turn this into an opportunity to deal with something that had been bothering me for a long time. So this man had unknowingly signed up to be my sparring partner. I traced a plan. I was going to engage him into arguments every night. I was going to do things that I knew irritated him because that surely would get him going. But of course, I didn't want to start too hard. I was going to start really small and just increase the pressure just a little bit more every day. Something very interesting happened over this time. My mind shifted, and rather than being afraid of going to work and just being anxious about my shifts, I started looking forward to them, and I started looking forward to meeting this man. This went on for about 2 weeks, and it got to a point where I was so comfortable at engaging him in arguments that I had started doing so many things that I was in a real confusion of why I had not been fired yet. And another thing happened, and it's that all the other waitresses started also defying him or started ignoring him. He had lost his power over us. We were not afraid of him anymore. After about 2 weeks of doing this, I decided I had what I wanted out of this adventure, and I moved on. A few months ago, I was in a bus here in London, and a young woman wearing a hijab and carrying her baby got in the bus. And this older man started screaming racial abuse at her. And nobody was doing anything. And she was almost about to get out of the bus when I decided that I was not just going to stand there and see this happen. As soon as I judged that I was at a safe distance, I started yelling at him. I wanted to make him the center of attention of the bus. I wanted him to feel how he was making that poor woman feel. And he was so exasperated. He was so angry. He could not outshout me. He could not make me go quiet. He ended up getting out of the bus. Because I dealt with my fear of confrontation, I am now able to not only stand up for myself, but I am also able to stand up for others. But this is exactly the same kind of situation that 20 years ago would have sent me home crying. When I graduated out of school in Sydney, I started looking for an internship. I contacted a couple of places, sent them my portfolios, got a couple of calls back, and went for a couple of interviews. These interviews didn't go so well. I got consecutive no's. And being the kind of person I was, my confidence was totally crushed. I decided to stop applying and instead decided to freelance for a couple of years. I knew I sucked. I didn't need more companies telling me what I already knew, so just decided to freelance. And this self-deprecating attitude and opinion of myself set my career back a couple of years. Fast forward to 2015, I'm living in Madrid. The job market has dried up because of the economic crisis. It's really hard to get a job, and I was very unhappy in mine. But for every job posting I could find, there were about 500 or more applicants, and it was impossible to stand up in an ocean of applications like that. Then by chance, some company called me, and I went for the interview. I was so excited. I prepared for it so much, and when I got to the interview, I bombed it so hard. I was not good at all, went horribly. And then I was thinking, well, this interview barrier is between me and my dream job. How am I gonna ever get a job if I'm not even able to represent myself? But also, how am I gonna get good at interviewing when I've only done it a handful of times in my life, and it's something you do so seldomly. So here's the reason why I don't get good at skiing. I only do it every couple of years for a couple of days, and then the next time it happens, I have already forgotten everything I've learned the season before, and I have to start from square zero. Same with interviewing. And then I thought, well, if I want to get good at interviewing, I need to do it. I need to do it lots of times until I am so confident at it. So, but how can I do it if nobody's calling me? So for this, I traced a plan. I decided to start applying to jobs where I was overqualified for, to see if at least that would give me an edge. And lo and behold, I started receiving phone calls, and I started going to interviews. And it was amazing. These interviews were the best. I was so relaxed. I was so calm. I was even charming, because of course, I had no skin in the game. I was not risking anything. And then when they said I didn't get the job, I also didn't care. So also helped me with dealing with my fear of rejection. I did this a couple of times, and through this exercise, I improved my portfolio and improved my CV. And when the right job finally showed up, I was ready for it. And that job was the job that got me to London. But the experience was so good in general that I decided to keep on doing it. And I continued doing it for the next 4 years. Through this hobby, which I called it my hobby, I was interviewing for fun. I learned so much. I learned how I compare to other candidates. I learned what companies are looking for, and it was really good in the moment I had to renegotiate my own salary or start a new job, it was absolutely priceless. If I knew when I graduated what I know now, I would not have been so devastated. And if I could speak to my old self, I would tell her, look, for every person you know that got a yes, they probably got a dozen of no's, and maybe even hundreds. You only got 3. Get a load of yourself. Get real, and keep on trying. It's not your fault, and also most companies are terrible at recruiting. Don't take it personal. Keep on trying. Having dealt with all these fears has really helped me grow as a person. And these are only 3 examples of thousands of things I do regularly. I'm in the habit of trying to face my fears consistently. The trick is to have a clear goal, to have a training plan and a way that you can measure yourself, and to also remember to be kind to yourself. Not when things don't go your way, you shouldn't treat this as failures. Now, I would like for everybody to think about something that they have been struggling with. Maybe you wish you had spoken up when you saw something. Maybe there is someone you've been wanting to deal with. Maybe there's something that makes you really uncomfortable. And what are you going to do about it? Thank you.